Welcome to the explainer that's going to completely decode the clinical trial alphabet soup for you. Look, if you're gearing up to step into the high-stakes world of clinical research, you've probably already realized this industry, it has its very own language. So today, we're going to translate that language together and equip you with absolutely everything you need to confidently crush your next clinical operations interview. Let's get into it. Let's establish the high stakes right off the bat here. Walking into an interview at a massive global organization like IQVIA, yeah, that requires way more than just a surface level understanding. We're going to take those dry, honestly kind of confusing regulatory definitions and transform them into the exact applied knowledge you actually need. Think of this explainer as your personal study guide, taking you from the bare bones blueprint of a trial all the way to those tricky behavioral questions that hiring managers just love to throw at you. All right, here is our protocol for today. We're going to start with the anatomy of a clinical trial, then move right into essential documents and data, and map out who's who in clinical research. After that, we'll tackle patient safety and compliance, before finally wrapping the whole thing up with acing your clinical ops interview. Okay, Section 1, Anatomy of a Clinical Trial, the blueprint. Before we get too deep into the operational weeds of the day-to-day job, let's quickly hit the absolute basics. First up, we've got randomization. This is simply the process of assigning participants to treatment groups completely by chance. Now, in a placebo-controlled study, one of these groups is going to get a placebo, an active substance, instead of the active treatment. You really have to understand that randomization and placebo controls are the absolute bedrock of unbiased clinical testing. They are what ensure the results we're seeing are actually from the drug, and not just some fluke of who was chosen to take it. And to protect that unbiased environment, we use blinding. A single blind study? That just means the participant is unaware of what treatment they're getting. But, and listen up, because if an interviewer asks you about blinding, you absolutely need to nail this distinction. A double-blind study means that neither the patient nor the investigating doctor knows who got the real drug and who got the placebo. This setup prevents both patient bias and investigator bias, which is exactly why it's considered the gold standard in clinical research. Moving right along to Section 2, Essential Documents and Data, the paper trail. So, there's a golden rule in clinical ops that you basically have to live by. If it isn't documented, it didn't happen. Period. The first key document here is the ISF, or Investigator Site File. This is the file containing all the essential trial documents that are maintained directly at the study site. This file literally lives exactly where the patients are actually being treated, at the local clinic or hospital level. It is the site's ultimate proof that they are following the rules. Conversely, we have the TMF, or Trial Master File. This one is the central file containing all those essential documents, but for the entire study. You can think of the TMF as the overarching, macro-level master record. And this one is managed by the sponsor of the drug or the clinical research organization, which you'll often hear called a CRO. Now, hiring managers absolutely love to ask about the difference between these two. It's a classic gotcha question to see if you truly grasped trial logistics. Just lock this in your mind right now. The ISF is local, right there at the hospital, while the TMF is central. It's the sponsor-level master file that collects data from all those different local sites. And honestly, all of those documents basically exist to prove one thing, that the site is following the protocol. The protocol is the detailed, absolute mandatory plan that describes exactly how a clinical trial is going to be conducted. If they ask you about starting up a trial, remember to emphasize strongly that absolutely no trial activities can begin until the study staff undergoes mandatory protocol training. Seriously, you cannot touch a patient or collect a single piece of data until that training is completely checked off. All right, on to Section 3, Who's Who in Clinical Research, Roles and Regulators. These are the people and authorities you'll be interacting with daily. Heck, these might even be the exact roles you're interviewing for right now. Let's look at the CRA, or Clinical Research Associate. If you're applying for this role, you've got to highlight that you will be the main monitor. Your job involves visiting the sites, checking compliance, and importantly, performing source data verification, or SDV. That just means you're comparing the data entered into the electronic system directly against the original patient's source documents to make 100% sure everything matches up perfectly. Then, on the flip side, we have the CRC, or Clinical Research Coordinator. The CRC role is totally boots on the ground. This person works inside the site, directly coordinating the actual patients. They're handling the scheduling, managing the daily site activities, and maintaining that site-level ISF documentation we just talked about.
You've got to keep this distinction crystal clear for the hiring manager. The absolute easiest way to remember it? The CRA monitors the study from the outside looking in, ensuring the rules are followed. The CRC coordinates the activities from the inside, actually executing those daily tasks with the patients. Simply put, CRAs verify and monitor, CRCs coordinate and execute.
Beyond the site staff, you also really need to know who makes the ultimate rules. Because you'll likely be working in a very global environment, you need to memorize this alphabet soup of international regulatory bodies. The CDSCO governs India, the FDA regulates the USA, and the EMA handles Europe. Dropping these acronyms shows you have a solid, macro-level understanding of global drug approval.
Which brings us to Section 4, Patient Safety and Compliance, the stakes.
Let's inject a little urgency here, because managing deviations and reporting adverse events isn't just about filing some paperwork. It is literally about protecting human lives. We start with an AE, or adverse event. This is defined as any unwanted medical occurrence during a clinical trial. Now, it's really crucial to note that an AE might be completely minor or non-serious. We're talking anything from a mild headache to a sudden rash. But even if it seems totally unrelated to the drug, it must be meticulously logged by the study staff, no exceptions.
However, an SAE, a serious adverse event, well, that immediately raises the stakes. An SAE is a medically severe event causing death, hospitalization, severe disability, or life-threatening condition. When an SAE occurs, routine paperwork goes right out the window. This requires urgent, immediate escalation to prevent catastrophic outcomes for other patients in the trial.
If an interviewer asks you about SAEs, you need to confidently lay out this exact, immediate workflow. Step 1, the serious event occurs. Step 2, it must be reported immediately to the sponsor. From there, Step 3, the ethics committee, the folks who protect patient rights, they must be notified. And finally, Step 4, the regulatory authorities have to be alerted. Walking an interviewer through this step-by-step chain of communication, that proves you deeply understand that patient safety is the ultimate priority. Okay, so what happens if the trial isn't compliant with those safety protocols? Well, you face reviews, and you need to know the difference between an audit and an inspection. An audit is a systematic internal review conducted by the sponsor to just ensure the site is following the rules. But an inspection, that is an official, legally binding review conducted by a regulatory authority, like the FDA. Basically, an audit helps you prepare, an inspection determines if your entire trial gets shut down.
Finally, Section 5, acing your clinical ops interview, the behavioral round.
All right, let's pivot away from the technical acronyms and talk about the rapid-fire behavioral questions you're inevitably going to face in the hot seat. I want to break the fourth wall here for a second. When the interviewer leans in and asks why you want this specific job at a massive organization like, say, IQVIA, you cannot just say, oh, well, I need a job. No way. You need a thematic, mission-driven answer that connects your personal ambition directly with their corporate goals.
You want to hit them with an ideal response that bridges these 3 pillars. Tell them you are looking to gain global clinical research exposure and drive your own professional growth, absolutely. But, and this is key, anchor that ambition in the ultimate desire to contribute directly to patient safety and the development of life-saving drugs. An answer like this shows you have personal drive, sure, but that you also deeply respect the heavy responsibility of this industry.
Wow, okay, we've covered a massive amount of ground today, from randomization and blinding all the way to the exact reporting flow of a serious adverse event. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to really ponder before you walk into that interview room. In a field where data integrity is quite literally a matter of life or death, are you ready to be the ultimate safety net? Take these concepts, memorize these key distinctions, and go ace that clinical operations interview. You've got this.